And there we are. Okay, you guys ready?
Yeah, man.
All right. And welcome to the spoiler room, my pilgrims out there. I'm not going to even try to do a John Wayne voice because I'll just murder it. But yes, we are kicking off July, which is Western month. Why? Because I felt inspired to cover a genre that seems to have long since faded into the sunset, more or less. And so we're going to cover this month some Westerns you may be familiar with or may not be familiar with. And tonight we're starting off with a bang with John Wayne's True Grit from 1969. And in the spoiler room tonight, I have a great crew with me to talk about this classic film. First off, we have Mr. Cole Meredith is here. Hello, Cole. How are you?
Fantastic, Mark. Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, well, we're glad to have you in the spoiler room and pulling up a chair to talk about this film. And next to him is the BFD in the big 10-gallon hat himself. It is Mr. Glenn Bittner. Hello, Glenn.
Hello.
How you doing tonight, partner?
I'm doing well.
Great to hear. Grab another sarsaparilla as we're going to discuss John Wayne's 1969.
I prefer cold buttermilk.
Cold buttermilk. Well, we don't serve that stuff here.
And we don't have no lemonade neither.
No, we don't. And yes, those sweet pipes, you hear it. He is back in the spoiler room. The one, the only. It is Scotty D is in his house. Hello, Scotty D. How are you?
Howdy, you Wisconsin brush pompers. I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you bet. Glad you can make it. If you didn't catch it last year, Scotty D sat down and talked about another John Wayne film with me, and that was The Shootist. But tonight, we are talking 1969, True Grit. Now, for those of you few out there who may not be familiar with this is the original. Yes, there was a remake that came out a few years back, but the original has a similar storyline where we get the story of a drunken, hard-nosed U.S. Marshal and a Texas Ranger who help a stubborn teenager track down her father's murderer in the Indian Territory. Ah, yes. This is a great cast, folks. And let me tell you, if you haven't watched this, well, we'll get the reactions here of the crew members and see if they enjoyed this one. We're going to start off with Scotty D tonight. Scott, what you saw True Grit, what'd you think of this film from 1969?
It was probably one of the early John Wayne films that I'd seen, and I've seen it 5 or 6 times since then. I'm a big fan of it. If you listen to the show Mark and I did a few months ago on The Shootist, you got to hear me get positively borderline weepy as I talk about how much I love John Wayne and how much I love his movies and respect him, even though politically we probably couldn't be further apart. And the good news, and I'm glad that show exists because you don't have to hear, because I don't have to get weepy this time. I can just sit down and talk about one of his more entertaining and just fun-filled movies. And True Grit is really special because it is the one where he finally won the Academy Award, and it has all the hallmarks of your standard John Wayne film, and yet there are enough differences in it from the other John Wayne films, both in his performance and in the film itself, to kind of show it as yes, it might be traditional, but it also is kind of like a hallmark opening up that very last moment in John Wayne's career, which he really needed because just prior to this, he had done The Green Berets, starred, produced, and directed that one, and which was a complete disaster. And this one was people were saying oh, he's washed up, he can't do it anymore, he can't hack it, and he came back as a fat old man, just like they were telling him being, and he kicked ass.
Well said. Glenn, how about you and your feelings when you've your initial feelings here with True Grit?
Oh man, that's tough because I grew up on John Wayne films. My dad is a huge John Wayne fan. So I mean, I would spend my Saturday, Sunday afternoons a lot of times, especially in the winter and on rainy days, just watching these films with him. So if I had to hazard a guess, I probably saw True Grit first time when I was probably 5 or 6 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I grew up watching these, and I've gone back and I've rewatched this one. I've probably at least a dozen times, if not more, over the years. It's one of my probably aside from Quiet Man, it's my favorite John Wayne film. And yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's one of those ones that's just kind of it's hard to pinpoint exactly what I like about it so much. He's always had John Wayne is in a lot of his films, not all of them, but a lot of them, especially as he got older. He's had his little quips and there's fun little lines in a lot of the movies, and this one has a ton of them. And I've always liked that in his stuff, and just the whole bury them. Are they dead? I wouldn't be asking to bury them if they weren't dead.
Yeah.
Stuff like little stuff like that, where it's little things that have just always gotten me. I mean, probably my favorite one is from the film McClintock, where his wife goes, "You smell of beer." He goes, "Makes sense. I've been drinking it." So it's got a lot of those little lines that I love from him. So
yeah, it definitely has a lot of those classic John Wayne quips and lines, which makes you wonder how much of those were really like scripted and how many may have been just from his experience from making so many films. That's just part of his character. But there is a lot of that in True Grit. And Cole, how about you in True Grit? And how do you feel when you first saw this, or when did you first see it?
I thought I was quite young, probably 11 or 12, somewhere around there, and we had just moved out of the city into the country, and there was not a whole lot of places nearby to rent movies. Like the library and the gas station was pretty much what we had. So this was available at the library, and I just fell in love with this when we first got it. I could just go to the library and rent it over and over, and I would stay up late and watch it more than once, along with stuff like the Cowboys and other John Wayne stuff that's just epic. But this one always really stood out. I mean, it's a really good Western in every sense. I mean, it really, especially for its time, it avoids a lot of the things that can bug me about Westerns from this era, which I don't need to go into, but it utilizes scope and scenery, which if you're doing a Western, that's always been important to me personally, is a sense of grand cinematography and just the ability to transport the audience to somewhere else. And this film really uses that. It uses color and landscape and just the sort of the fluidity of open space. And it's very rich on character too, which is also another important part of, to me, making a good Western, because as technology continues to grow, we run out of ways to isolate characters. I mean, if you're writing any sort of story nowadays where people connect, I mean, you've got to do a whole variety of things before you can have two characters even begin to focus on each other. The first being, write out their cell phone somehow. And with a Western, you can really spend time with people and get to know who they are, and they can take the time to talk about themselves without it seeming, pretentious or overdrawn. You can really spend time with people, and this movie does. I mean, I think John Wayne is fascinating to watch, and this is one of his best performances. I think I'm with Glenn on this, although depending on the day or the year, this is my favorite movie from him. Mm-hmm. He really owns this role, but also I think Kim Darby is sensational. I really, in large part, this is her film, and I think she owns so much of the story with her performance. I mean, she really stood out to me tonight watching it again. As a young man, obviously, I connected with John Wayne, and was more interested in some of the supporting performances by, you know, Robert Duvall and Dennis Hopper. And I believe, doesn't Wilford Brimley show up in here? I guess I didn't realize that until tonight. I thought I saw him somewhere. I was like, holy shit. But Kim Darby, man, is fantastic. Not to pick on Glen Campbell, I think his character is kind of a drag. I don't know, for whatever reason, the story never gets close enough to him to really get to know him or care about him. He's just kind of this cocky jerk, and he's quite underdrawn in terms of the two other people that he's writing with. But she even saves those scenes with him. I mean, somehow she manages to instill him with some sort of personality in the brief scene she's given, like when she's bandaging his hand. And yeah, anyways, I love this film. It's rich on character. It's beautiful to look at, and it's just a really solid Western.
And I agree with all of you. I really like this Western quite a bit. And Westerns usually, you know, and I think that's why it's a little tough, because they are usually very character heavy, more so. Because, I mean, for a Western, you know, you can only do so much with the landscape or the stories of Westerns before you get to what's been done already. So it really hinges, I think, more on your characters and how interesting they are. And we have three very interesting, very different characters in here. And you mentioned them already, Cole. You know, John Wayne's Rooster Cogburn, who is this crotchety, old, heavy set, drunk, you know, deputy marshal who will soon drink himself into the ground, but can also still capture the crooks. So he's still good at his job, relatively. And then Glen Campbell playing LaBeef, who, you know, I almost get the impression he's a representation of possibly what Cogburn may have been like a little bit when he was really young. You know, only on the good side, but still that cocky, you know, just that type of character. And then we've got Mattie Ross, who Kim Darby just owns so much of the screen when she's on here. It's amazing. So I want to talk about these three characters. I think, you know, first off, like Rooster Cogburn, you know, for a hero, Glenn, would you say this is a little bit of a different role than what you may have seen John Wayne before? I mean, here he's kind of a vulnerable guy with a lot of vices.
Yeah, you don't get a lot. You don't see where John Wayne is, you know, an alcoholic.
Yeah,
I mean, he drinks from plenty of his movies, but he's never, you know, usually if there's an alcoholic in one of his movies, it's, you know, it's the town drunk. He's not generally the town drunk. So yeah, I mean, you get that a little different. I mean, he's obviously older too, even though he's a lot older than the character was written for.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
and I think that's what maybe changed some people's minds about Wayne as well. Scott, would you say as well that Rooster Cogburn character for John Wayne is a break from kind of the norm of what people may have seen him in as kind of the, you know, hard riding, clean type of cowboy?
It is. It absolutely is. Glenn mentioned The Quiet Man a while back, which is just an amazing movie.
Oh,
it just gives me chills thinking about that movie. But that's a film where he was able to kind of show a different side of himself. And this is another one where almost the opposite side, you know, just reckless and loud and boisterous and everything like that. See, John, as we mentioned on the show that we did, Mark, on The Shootist, John Wayne was sometimes criticized for being, oh, he's not a very good actor. He just does one thing. No. He did one thing really well, but he didn't have an expansive range. But if you got him within that range, he was great. This is still within that range, but it's a little bit different. He's a tough guy. He's the hero. He's the voice of the film. Becomes the voice of the film, basically, even if he isn't at the beginning. But it is a little, and so that's we're used to. Okay, we can kind of settle into that. So it's not like, you know, it's not like where they decided like, oh, let's see how far we can stretch John Wayne, and then they did like had him cast him as Genghis Khan, and they said, "Okay, that's a bit too far." This one, it's within the acceptable range, but he is able to do this. He is at times an oaf.
Mm-hmm.
He's loud. Some of his characters are loud. Some of them are very quiet. This one is very loud, and it could be argued very obnoxious at times. He is an alcoholic, as Glenn mentioned. He is somebody who has very obviously made a wreck of his life through his own behavior. And he has very little to show for it. And he holds on to what little he does have to show for it with like this, with just this fierce territoriality, because he lost his marriage. He lost his kid. You know what? But you know what? I have my Chinese cook. I have my cat. And I have my way of doing things. And you're not going to get away in that way, And so in that way, he has the code that makes him a familiar John Wayne character, but he has enough weakness and enough frailty and enough differences in his thing that makes it a different character. You look at his facial expressions, like take it the facial expressions that he has as Rooster Cogburn in contrast to what he would have had in one of his earlier roles, where he would have given you a stern look. Or this one, he has like this very over dramatic, ferocious, almost feral way of looking at you. He is he is still this byproduct of the Old West, but he's a very different side of it. So there's enough of it to make him familiar enough to film to people who are going into this movie to make them comfortable. But then there's also enough that is different that really catches you off guard. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's remembered as not just a good performance by the actor, but a memorable character by the actor.
Yeah, it's definitely a memorable character. And Cole, how about you? We don't get to see John Wayne much like this. How'd you feel about his portrayal, this character that really... You feel, he's a hero, but he's got a lot of flaws.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I really don't know how heroic he is. I mean, he is the hero of the story from a certain viewpoint, but the courtroom sequence right away sets up the fact that he's definitely might not be the straightest shooter in the world. And he's a bit of a liar. And I believe the second scene we see him in, he's got that bottle, the bottom is at the ceiling as he's drinking it. Yeah, he's flawed. What's interesting was, as I said earlier, this was quite possibly the very first John Wayne movie I ever saw. I mean, I can't either this or the Cowboys. I saw them both like the same week. So sort of every time I would watch him after this, I would compare him to this. So for me, this wasn't the branching out of it, and I'm obviously not as knowledgeable as Scott. Anyway, I've seen maybe a third of John Wayne's movies, possibly less. It did to me, just like having watched it and then worked backwards into the rest of his stuff. It doesn't seem necessarily so different as it does just deeper and more developed and more. I have not read the book, but it does seem more literary. It seems like there's a lot of story going on here, and it seems like I don't know the backstory here. It seems like he may have read the book and had a connection to the character, or maybe it's just that he is the character. But it seems like it, like Jack Nicholson with the Joker almost. I mean, he just that's it. I mean, he is that guy, and he handles the parts that most people would have to like research. He just knows, the rougher element of the kid. He doesn't have to, sit there and meditate 10 minutes before they yell action. He just goes there, and that's really what I like about it. And not many of his other characters have resonated as much with me. His movies do as a whole, but this is for me, again, just his like probably my favorite role of his.
Well, his Rooster Cogburn is a product of the frontier. I mean, he's done, he's run with a bad crowd for a while. They have that discussion later on where you learn that he was in the war, but he was attached to probably the company with the worst reputation. during the war. So, he's got history here, and you explore a lot of that. You bring up a good point. This film really is heavy, literary style. It's heavy on the dialogue.
Yeah,
I mean, even for a Western, watching it again, I forgot just how heavy on the dialogue it was with this, and the characters definitely, And then we have LaBeef, who's a very young Glen Campbell, who is cocky, who is a Texas Ranger, and kind of completely a bit opposite in many ways to the old Rooster Cogburn. But I'm wondering if he was there meant to be kind of the younger version of what Cogburn used to be. Scott, what would you say? Would you say maybe that's part of why they have LaBeef there, or maybe it's just so that he can have a conflict with someone other than Mattie Ross?
I can see that being a possible. They don't really explain it.
No, they don't.
So it's kind of open, and I can see that being a possible interpretation of that. So that's totally valid. I can tell you that what I got from it was the classic thing of that. Well, John Wayne's Rooster Cogburn is old and fat, and Glen Campbell is young and spry, kind of like you're saying, but rather than being a reflection of what he might have been in his younger years, because we don't really know, I see it kind of as the generational gap.
Oh, okay, sure.
That he's teaching it. For instance, you got the scene of he's got Glen Campbell has Rooster Cogburn has got these old guns that he's using that are trusty, and he's got his old way of doing things, and he knows this lay of the land and that lay of the land. And Glen Campbell's got this great new gun, and at one point he's like, "Oh, I'm going to get us some dinner," and he shoots this turkey, and he basically mutilates the thing when he shoots it, because as the guy as Cogburn's looking at it, he's saying "Yeah, look at that, he shredded it." He just kind of looks over at Maggie and says, "Too much gun."
Yeah,
and that's kind of the thing is that it's this is him. It's yeah, you know what? I might be loud, I might be boisterous, but look at this kid. He comes off. He's impulsive. He doesn't understand that there are times when you need to pull back a second and really look at things. He doesn't understand the wisdom of going into things. I mentioned it. I joked about it in the beginning. This last time I watched it, I wanted to find out what he meant when he used some of his colloquialisms. Rooster Cogburn, when he used some of his colloquialisms and talking to people, and at one point he calls Glen Campbell. It starts wailing on Mattie, because I don't want this gal to come with us, this kid to come with us. He says, "You're enjoying that too much," and then he just says he says, "I tend to do things my own way." And he says, "You do, and it'll be the last mistake you ever make, you Texas brush popper." I'm like, okay, what is a brush popper? Because it sounds so funny. That is a really fucking mean thing to say. Thank God the audio commentary actually said what it is. Says it is literally a brush popper. It means somebody who will hide in the bushes for you, pop off, and really and shoot you and ruin your life, and then run away like a coward.
Wow.
That's what it means. I'm like, yeah. So so I think Glen Campbell it's kind of the generational thing. He says
Sure.
This kid could be good,
but
he's impulsive, and he doesn't understand the wisdom of going in over the impulsiveness of it, if that makes any sense. My wording is kind of off tonight.
No,
but I think that's kind of what I got from their relationship there. Glen Campbell, God bless him, he even said that he wasn't a very good actor. And he's not terrible, but he is kind of wooden in the part. But it's serviceable enough for the character. Damon was better. Let's just say that.
Damon was better. And it, compared to, Kim Darby and John Wayne, just kind of, you feel almost bad for Glen Campbell, because here they put him in here and he's just like, man, he's trying to hold his own in these scenes, but they're just dominating him. But yeah, LaBeef, you got that scene where he's spanking Mattie, and that's just like, wow, that's just there's something wrong here.
Can't blame him.
No,
Okay, the character was 14, so that's weird, but the actress was 21. So.
She was 21, yeah. So there is that. So, Cole, how about you with LaBeef? Would you say he maybe was the younger representation of John Wayne? Or let me add something. How about a younger John Wayne, Rooster Cogburn, who hadn't gone through the rough life?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it, and I'll keep that in mind next time I watch. I'm probably going to watch it again later tonight, along with the sequel, which I've never seen. So, yeah, I'll keep that in mind, and it may help me appreciate the character more because, again, nothing against the gentleman who played him, but I just this last time, maybe it was just my mood. I thought, man, this, as you said, he just wasn't. I think it's the way the character was written, probably, but he wasn't holding his own against these other two potent characters. It's kind of just washed out by the end of the film. By the time he sort of meets his end, it doesn't have the potency it could have.
Mm-hmm.
Had they developed it more, or maybe it was the actor. If he says so, I'm not gonna debate him. But
Glen Campbell was mostly a good egg, but he only says, "Yeah, I'm a singer. I'm not an actor."
Just figured out an actor.
But I don't think he was bad. I mean, I didn't sit there wincing or anything. I just thought, this is kind of boring. They, if they had spiced this up, the whole thing would work. But obviously, the movie's a classic and it does work. So he must have done something right.
Well, you're not exactly. I don't think you're exactly supposed to like LaBeef. In all honesty,
yeah.
He almost in a way is kind of an intruder on this relationship between Rooster and Mattie. So it could be that route with it too. Glenn, how do you feel about LaBeef?
Yeah.
Did not care for him.
Preamble to a Glenn sigh.
Man, there are fence posts with more personality in this film than he has.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's even a thing mentioned where, Hathaway, the director, apparently is a bit of an asshole. But I guess a lot of times he did not like. Well, he didn't like Glen Campbell in this role. He yelled at him like numerous times. Like, every time I say action, you stiffen up. I'm like, okay, yeah, that seems about right. He's very stiff, and the whole reason he's in it is they wanted to use him to write a song that would then basically be free advertising for the film. Because the original role was they wanted Elvis.
Wow. But
Elvis's manager wanted him to have top billing over John Wayne.
No.
So that was not going to happen. So they replaced him with Glen Campbell.
Wow, that you just blew my mind right there, Glenn.
Yeah.
And as wooden as Glen Campbell is, God, Elvis would have fucking ruined this movie.
Oh, he would have. Can you imagine?
Completely.
Can you imagine the Elvis versus John Wayne fanboy fights that would be going on to this day?
It'd be almost as bad as a Marvel DC thing.
Oh gosh.
So we've talked about Rooster and LaBeef, and now we get to probably my favorite character with a fantastic portrayal by Kim Darby, Mattie Ross, who we're introduced to, who right away, she is a different female character than you have seen in a few other Westerns. Glenn, what about you with Mattie Ross, how we're first introduced to her, and basically that whole first act, which is mostly, her. How do you feel about Mattie Ross?
Yeah. I'm not a big Kim Darby fan.
Really?
I'm really not.
Mm-hmm.
And the director wasn't a Kim Darby fan.
Oh, really?
John Wayne was not a Kim Darby fan. I hear she's really nice, but I mean, I think she's okay. It's just, I don't know, man. It's just, and part of it is probably the writing, just the way she's written at times. It's for I don't know. I think part of it is that she's supposed to be like 14 years old,
right?
And here, she's played by a woman who's
21,
already has a kid, and is going through a divorce.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. I mean, this is a world weary woman already. So, I think that is part of it. I mean, I don't think she's bad. I'm just not a big fan of her. No. I mean, that's the.
She holds her own though with John Wayne in the scenes, though. I mean,
I think she does fine.
Yeah.
But I don't think she's anything special.
Cole, how about you and Mattie Ross? How did you feel about her performance in here and the character?
Oh, what a fantastic character! I mean, this is a character that could be done, dozens of times. Not that they need to make this movie dozens of times, but I can just see this story being told and told over and over again, mainly because of her character and the way she sees the world and sort of the youthful resilience and how I mean, in a lot of ways it's a love story, between her and Rooster, which I think is one of the interesting things that the remake did. I haven't read the book, but I think it's interesting, how he grows on her and how much they are alike, and how they really could have been, brother and sister, or even soulmates in a parallel universe, because hence the title, True Grit. They're both badasses, man. They eat dirt to see that the right thing is done, even though Rooster's a little more world weary at this point. But he's, as Scott mentioned, there's that other side to him, the side that would own a cat. I mean, that's not a typical tough guy thing to do. But in terms of her performance, I think it's fantastic. I mean, she does great. I don't know if I've seen her in anything else, but
well, you've seen her in plenty. You probably just didn't recognize her.
Probably.
To drink Peru. I have to add Cole.
Oh,
the cat is a general.
Yes.
So
General Sterling, right?
General Sterling.
It's an impressive cat. I like the cat. He was cool. He owned every scene, and I even liked the little dialogue they had in there about the cat on how you don't own a cat.
Which is a great reflection of the character.
It is!
Yeah. Like, you don't really own a cat, he just kind of lives there.
Yeah, right. This is Rooster saying it. You're like, what? Huh? But so, Scotty D, we got 1-4, kind of on Mattie Ross. How do you feel about this character? And
I'm going to tell you that now there's a lot of IMDb trivia. If you go into there, I'm going to say that on this movie, even more than most, I'm like, I would not believe any of the IMDb trivia until I saw it backed up by another source.
Right.
And is that because if you read the trivia, basically everybody else in the entire world was up for the Mattie Ross character except Kim Darby. And I've only heard the confirmation of one other actress, is that it was actually supposed to be played by Mia Farrow.
Wow.
Yeah. And she was even just about signed up for it, and they had to replace her with 7 weeks to go till shooting. And they came up with Kim Darby, and John Wayne wasn't too fond of her. It is alleged on the commentary track, I don't just on the commentary track, so it's just like an opinion of them, that she might have broken up the boys club, and that's why he might not have been too fond of her. It might have broken up the boys club of the set. Although he probably mended his ways, because in the sequel he was paired up with Katharine Hepburn, and you're not going to get a much ballsier chick than that. But yeah, Kim Darby. So she wasn't too fond of her. Henry Hathaway, who, as Glenn said, could be kind of a dick, is not a big fan of her. I am glad Cole leaves to her defense because I want to be in the corner of the Kim Darby Appreciation Society.
Word.
I really like Kim Darby in this part. I really like the character Mattie Ross. I think what she does is fantastic because, as I said earlier, the film becomes John Wayne's voice, but it's not really, doesn't start out that way. It starts out with her voice. In fact, John Wayne doesn't show up till 13 minutes into the movie, and when he does, it is not a very dramatic entrance as compared to, say, like Stagecoach or the Searchers. It's Kim Darby's thing. It's her voice. It's her obstinate and like, no, you are going to listen to me, and we can, I'm sure, played off as stubborn and obnoxious to some people back then. Think about when this movie was made.
Mm-hmm.
This movie was made in, like, what is it, 68, 69?
69, yeah.
69. And so we're talking the 60s. We have a G-rated, PG-13 today, Western in which the old voice of the West is kind of bended to the wills of a strong-willed, independent woman,
Yes.
who will not be left out of men's business, who will not be left out of your politics or your negotiations. I know what I want. This is how I want it. She just makes it by being just very obstinate and demanding the whole way. The movie kind of cheats and makes it acceptable because eventually she does need help in the movie.
Right.
But she becomes this voice. Now, the funny thing is that given her character, oh yeah, she might be the type to march for a woman's right to vote.
Yeah.
In a couple decades. But she'd also probably be the type of person to lead a temperance committee and push towards prohibition as well. So she might not be quite the revolutionary you have in mind, given the culture and like what she represents here.
Right.
But that's like if you place it in the 1880s. Mm-hmm. If you place it in the 1960s, you're like, fuck yes. And that's what her character is. Right. And she's the youngest person in the cast. She is strong-willed. She knows what she needs to do, and she's horrified by some of the things she sees. She insists on seeing the hanging, even though she's horrified by the results. She insists on going after and bringing her father's killer to justice, even though she knows what that means. Yes, she does require help at a certain point, but she's this strong-willed character, and she does it in a way. It would be so, and there's times when she is just this brat.
Yeah.
You know, she's never been away from home before. Always threatening with the lawyer. Always threatening. I own property. You can't treat me like this. At one point, she tells Ned Pepper, "I own property." You know, like, big fucking deal, lady. But like, you know, this is the thing: is that she has her, just like Rooster Cogburn, she has her set ways of doing things.
Right.
But is the thing is that she could be so unlikable.
Mm-hmm.
It would be so easy for an actress to make this character unlikable with the way she's written in a film of this period. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that is because of some of the stuff. Apparently, she was seen on apparently it was the it was what was it? A Gunsmoke episode that Hal Walls, the producer, had seen her on, and that's why he says, like, no, she's in.
Oh,
even though they didn't want her in, like, and they liked her. And, you know, of course, if you're a Trekkie person, you saw her as Miri on the classic Star Trek episode where she was playing a kid then, but you know what?
Yeah.
So was Pollard. That was even worse. So
one crazy summer. She's been in a lot of stuff.
And I think a lot of the writing about that, the way about making that a strong person, might have something to do with that the screenplay in what was exceptionally rare, especially for a tough Western of the period, was written by a woman.
Yeah, and this wasn't her first Western she wrote either.
Marguerite Roberts.
Roberts.
Apparently she was blacklisted at one point.
Really?
Yeah, she was blacklisted at one point, and the story goes is that John Wayne loved the book True Grit when he read it. Oh, this is so good! This is so good, and he wanted to do it, but he says, "Well, there is a screenplay, but you won't want to do it." It was by Marguerite Roberts. She was blacklisted. I mean, this is the guy John Wayne played Big Jim McLean at
Right.
one point, which was a very pro McCarthy movie, and he says, "Well, hand it to me. We're going to take a look at it." And he says, like, "Okay, so you're going to want to fire her and get it rewritten." She's like, "Nope, this is the best Western I've read in ages. We're just going to do this."
Wow.
And basically, John Wayne was somebody where you got to remember he was the top star for most of his career.
Right.
And he was never out of the top 10 during his ever since the 40s.
Yeah.
So if you didn't say, "Oh no, John, we're not doing that,"
Right.
because otherwise you didn't have a movie.
that makes so much sense too, because so often in movies of these sorts, when there's a quote unquote intelligent young lady, it always feels in my bones like there's just some guy at a computer trying desperately to figure out what a smart lady would do, and it's the type of smart lady that only a guy could write, and doesn't even remotely resemble any women that exist in my life, at least. This character, I know young ladies like this. I mean, she resonates. Again, probably just really good writing.
Yeah, I'd say it's a lot of factors enter in on the writing of Mattie Ross. Though I will say, as much as I like her in the original, Haley Steinfeld got robbed. I'm gonna say that right now.
She was fantastic, but I think that I compared Damon and Glen Campbell because basically they are kind of the same character in both movies. Right. Everything else about each movie, though, is so different.
Yeah, it is.
That I'm true. Like, okay, one's. I mean, it's almost like they're two completely different parts. But Haley Steinfeld did an excellent job in the remake.
Oh my God, did she ever?
She was solid, especially for her actually being 14, unlike Kim Darby, and taking on a role like she did and delivering that dialogue, which isn't easy because the Coen brothers wrote the remake. I don't want to hang too much on the remake, but I thought she held her own. And coming back to the 1969 one, just to round out, because there's some other things that I want to get our panel here to their questions or topics they want to talk about. But in case you're interested, yes, this is a film that stars also Robert Duvall and Dennis Hopper. Who are in this film as well, and we've mentioned Wilford Brimley already, so it's pretty impressive who was in this film. I totally forgot, in all honesty, that's Robert Duvall, because as Lucky Ned Pepper, the bad guy who's traveling, who has the Tom Chaney who actually killed Mattie Ross's dad. He's actually the head of the gang, and I forgot totally that was Robert Duvall, because you barely recognize him until he starts talking with that beard that he has.
Well, it was so young too at the time.
He was really young. But one of the things that I thought was interesting, and I wanted to bring up with the group, because this was made in 1969, and Glenn, we'll start with you. The dialogue for this film, I saw someone say that for a 1969 film, they really were spot on with the dialogue of the period. Would you agree with that? And how did you feel about the dialogue? Did it feel authentic Western dialect?
How old do you think I am, Mark?
No, I didn't mean it like that. You're familiar with Westerns. God, no. I didn't.
I think it is very good. And Scott already brought up the one thing with that scene when LaBeef was taking the switch to Mattie, and just a few other things like that. I mean, just some great dialogue, and not even just the fact that it fits well for the period. It's just good dialogue in general. As I said, the there's the whole thing where he's serving a rip to the rat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and just
oh god, yeah.
He ends up I just painted me and then shoots him. It's like, just good all around. I mean, and that whole line, that fill your hand, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
it's those are the things I like in a lot of westerns. You get that a lot in some of the Clint Eastwood older westerns too, where you just get those great they just fit so well in that gunslinger type world. It just works so beautifully.
Well, and the reason I brought it up is because there were other westerns made in the 60s, but the dialect from the 60s kind of worked its way into the script in a number of ways. But this one really didn't feel like it was made in 60s. It felt like it was an older film than it was. I thought, and I think the dialect helped. Cole, would you agree with that? That dialogue, the dialogue in this for a 69 Western, the dialogue and everything, it really felt older, didn't it?
You can't serve papers on a rat, baby sister. You gotta kill him or let him be. Yeah, I really like the dialogue in this movie. I mean, it's got to be hard to write authentic Western dialogue. I mean, I went through a phase in my life where I was really into Billy the Kid, and I attempted to read some of the letters that he sent the governor in his own handwriting, and I quickly realized that's impossible. And he was supposed to be fairly literate, for that day and age. So then I tried to read them, transcribed, and it's almost just as hard. I mean, people didn't talk the way they do now, obviously, and to try and capture that in '69 when the whole craze of being quote unquote authentic in westerns, which took a hold at some point, I don't know, I guess in the late 80s or early 90s, even though how authentic can you ever be? I just think it's really good dialogue, as Glenn said. I mean, I think it just snaps and crackles, and there's long stretches of moments where people are just talking about themselves, and it just, there's always something there to keep you interested, the rhythm. There's a rhythm there. There's an internal rhythm to all of this. It feels lived in. And yeah, I guess it does feel authentic. But again, there are moments, as in every Western, where you kind of think, geez, but for the most part, I thought it was great. Yeah.
Scotty D, what about you? Would you agree for a modern quote unquote Western, or 69 Western anyway, it felt pretty authentic for the time it was made?
It felt authentic to these uneducated ears. It sounds rather authentic, although I think that if we actually were to listen to people back then, I think it would sound like a foreign language.
Sure.
If you even look at the Cole just mentioned the letters that Billy the Kid sent, I can't even imagine what that was like, because I read the Pat Garrett book.
Mm-hmm.
The book
oh my god!
The book that Pat Garrett wrote. Oh, it sucked.
Oh my gosh!
You know how they talk about that being a financial disaster? It deserved to be.
Yes, it's awful.
It's a horrible book. Even that sounds like, and that's like some guy obviously struggling through a ghostwriter to come up with words. That's like not good. Yes. But I mean, like, if you even like look at the correspondence that actors would send to like producers and such, since we're talking about Hollywood, say like, I don't know, 70 years ago or so. I mean, I read like some of Humphrey Bogart's telegrams.
Mm-hmm.
His telegrams read better than a lot of bestseller students. like, oh, that's a really pretty turn of phrase there, Humphrey. But, yeah, it's like, but to these uneducated ears, it sounds very authentic. That's one of the things that True Grit managed to do, is that it managed to be one of those movies that was released at the very tail end of the 60s, early 70s. There's a couple movies that tried to have it both ways. They tried to be, okay, we're going to be a traditional film.
Right.
But if you really, really, really look at it, there are enough things in it. Maybe a traditional film, like, say, like along the lines of, say, like Patton.
Right.
which was a traditional film. It's also an excellent film. I'm not trashing Patton, but they tried to have it both ways, and it straddled this fence. It seems like True Grit is a very traditional old film, just like the other, but there's enough in it where you're like, that's new.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's why John Wayne was able to continue his career until the very end.
Right.
Because he was basically done after Grain of Berets. Because it was such a... I mean, we're talking Battlefield Earth of the 60s, guys. I'm not kidding. It was really bad. It was that much of a debacle. But, like, this is like a... so this is why he was able to continue, is because it managed to have enough tradition and enough respect, but note that the world was changing.
Right.
And I think that you got some of that in the dialogue as well, is that the dialogue sounded very, very authentic. And because the dialogue sounded so authentic, they could get these different ideas in there. Because let's not forget that this film came out not too long after like films like, say, like Wild Bunch.
Right.
Compare this to like the films of like a Peck and Paw.
Right. Your extreme Western.
It's like, yep, we're doing the same. We're doing the old thing, and we're doing it different now.
Yeah.
And this managed to say like, oh no, we're still doing it kind of the same. Not really.
Nice.
That's what they did, and I think that the dialogue was kind of a gateway to do that.
Sure. Well, we're going to go now to see if any of our fantastic crew members here have a subject or question we may not have talked about yet that they'd like to discuss. Glenn, how about you? Have you got something for us to talk about that we may have not touched on yet?
I don't think so. We've touched on a lot tonight.
Yes, we did. Probably more so than a lot of people may have expected. But Cole, how about you? Did you have a topic or question we haven't already covered?
No, I mean, I was curious if anybody had read the book. I have not.
I was going to ask that as well. I have not either, no.
Have you, Glenn? You didn't either. Did you, Glenn? Or
what was that?
Have you read the book?
No, I have not read the book.
Well, that's our homework for next week.
From what I understand, the screenplay is quite literate and quite faithful to the book.
Yeah.
Although when Coens did their remake, they said they were going to be more like the book. So that is perhaps even more so just from the reputation. I think that from the sounds of things, it sounds like they were faithful to the book in everything but tone.
Right. The ending, I think they used the original ending from the book in the remake, and they didn't in the Wayne version. Because in the Wayne version, she gets her arm bit by this rattlesnake after she gets knocked down the hole, which I love. The villains get killed, and there's still like 15 more minutes of film.
Yeah, totally.
But in the original in 1969, she gets bit and she gets ill, but she still has her arm. But in the remake, yes, folks, this is a spoiler room, she actually loses her arm.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a surprise. And I think that was the original ending. I'd have to look it up, though. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. But
it feels like that would be a book ending.
Yeah, because she goes and
we don't have to bring the actress back for a sequel.
Well, because in the ending in the remake, it's older her with her kid, and she actually tracks Rooster down, who's been traveling in a circus as a cowboy, and he passes away, and she's got one arm though because of the snake bite she had, which, in all honesty, felt a little more realistic too. I mean, they. I
gotta say this though. I mean, I love both endings, and I love what they do with the character, the Mattie Ross character in the newer ending.
Sure.
It feels more real. I like the narration about how she never married or got involved with anybody. I got no time for it,
Right.
Yeah. I liked that, It was so in tune to the character. Having said that, I love the ending to the 69 True Grit so
Well,
much.
it's so happy. I mean,
well, it makes
talking about a graveyard.
great. No, this is one of those endings that actually does make me misty-eyed. It really makes me verklempt. Just when she reveals, guys, spoiler room. You should have known when you saw the title of the goddamn show. When she reveals that she has made a place for him next to her.
Oh, in the gravesite, yeah.
I mean, it's almost like she kind of knows that she's not going to have a big family of her own.
Right.
And it's like, at this point, you're family.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, you kidding me? Dude, you can't do that to an emotionally fragile man. It totally busts me up. It is such a subtle moment. They don't really overextend it to like really get the waterworks going or anything. It's like, because Rooster Cogburn would not want that. He's
right.
like, okay, yeah, well, that's really nice of you. I might take you up on that. Oh my God, you kidding me? I'm sure he went off in those. I'm sure he went off in those mountains and had himself a good cry.
Yeah.
That is like it is an extremely powerful moment.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I like the ending of the remake, I love the ending of the original. Yeah. It really gets me.
So, Scotty D, did you have a question or anything?
Nope.
Oh. We've covered this Western quite a bit.
I really did. You know what? I if I had any, I think it was covered, because I think because the crew is so great here. So
it's been a fun.
Take a bow, everybody. It took my question.
It's definitely been an interesting discussion, and it was great tonight. I'm glad you guys could join us for kicking off Western Month, and I thought this was a great film to start this month with, because even though it was made in '69, it really felt like an older school Western, and the fact that they did the remake, and you look at the remake, I think the remake, honored this one quite a bit as well, unlike some remakes out there. So that's another reason why I wanted to cover it. But I thank the crew for joining us tonight. This is the part now where we go down the line quick, where you can hear where they are when they are not here. So Cole, go ahead. Why don't you just tell us where they can find you at?
Shadows and Lovers Productions. Right now, our page is pretty easy to find on Facebook. We make low-budget horror movies. Hunt us down. We're out there doing stuff. Thanks for having me, man.
Awesome. Glad you could join us. And partner, Glenn, where can they saddle up and find you at?
Well, Pilgrim, you can find me at the B-Movie Bunker on the YouTube. Also, you can hear my gaming podcast, The Adventure Party, on gncast.com. Find me on Facebook, B-Movie Bunker, and Guy in the Bunker Productions. Find me at guyinthebunker.com, or just follow me on Twitter at Guy in the Bunker.
Awesome. And Scotty D, my friend, where can they find you at, Pilgrim?
Trying to make ends meet. Oh, also, you can find me at movieocrity.com, which, once again, I have failed to update after my recent move. I hope to remedy that sometime soon. You can also catch the old episodes of my web series, Movieocrity, at vimeo.com/channels/Movieocrity.
Well, there's plenty of good content for people to go out there and take a look at on Movieocrity while we are anxiously waiting for you to update those things. So there's plenty out
just
there.
Go to the back stuff. Come on.
Well, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this journey out into the Old West. We're going to take this trip a few more times this month. Next week, it's going to be Tombstone. We're going a little bit more of a modern retelling of a classic historical moment. So I hope you tune in there. Please subscribe to us on the iTunes. You can find us in the Spoiler Room. You just look up the Spoiler Room podcast and it'll pop up. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, comment and rate us. It always helps. You can also find our old episodes not only on iTunes, but at specialmarkproductions.com, where you can also find the other things that I dabble in. We appreciate you, folks. And now it's time to saddle our horses and right off into the night. So say goodnight, gentlemen.
Good night,
Good
gentlemen.
night, gentlemen.
Yeehaw.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. Waha.